Right, what's happening? Something I've been thinking about for a while here, and I've even written notes. What is the point in creativity? What is the point in making stuff when so much shit is going on in the world? Buckle in, because we're going to look at the importance of art and creativity. Welcome to the Shoveit Podcast.
Yeah, you better.
Creativity seems a little pointless at the moment. Like making stuff, making art, whatever it is we're all doing and why we're making stuff. And I feel like it's because in comparison to other things that are happening in the world, who fucking cares if some dude makes a YouTube video or we paint a picture or, we take some photos of some stuff. And I don't know, maybe that's an age thing for me. Maybe as I've got older, the world sort of looks different to me. But I feel like it's more like a global positioning. Like we're looking at where it sits in scale with everything else. What I mean by that is like every time I open my phone, it's just doom and gloom constantly. It's some sort of war or murder or fucking some group of people fighting or arguing with another group of people. And I feel like everything has become very polarized. And I'm not the only person. If you watch anything on the internet, that's the general feeling from everybody, this polarization of people. And the problem is the more you watch, the more it takes you down a route. The more you consume, the more it fucking warps your mind, and then effectively the more of it you watch. Now, the problem I think is that in the past, a lot of these things, atrocities, hardships, wars, these things happened in the past. But what has been so mad about the last maybe 10 years, but especially the last 5 years, is the amount that social media has had input into us, the end user, the daily average human being. Like the amount that we are invested in everything that's happening all the fucking time now. It's like it's no longer an option. In the past, I think when I was a kid and growing up, I go back to the lovely years of the 90s as a kid, and obviously I was a child then, so very different. But when I think back to the way my parents would have digested this information, you would have had to physically turn on the news. You would have had to pick up a newspaper. And that information wouldn't have been as readily available. Whereas now, and you haven't even got a choice. You open up these social media apps and they've just been fucking hijacked by news, current affairs, economic downfall, war, poverty, genocide. It's just fucking like, that's a lot. That is a lot to handle on the daily. And I think for me that the big like line in the sand was the Charlie Kirk assassination, whatever you want to think about that. And believe me, there's been some fucking mad stories come out. I'm someone who's like kind of interested in the concept of conspiracies, right? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I find them interesting. But it doesn't take long to find some mad people on the internet with some crazy stories. And then it doesn't take much to like correlate all that stuff back and then build a story that just fucks with your concept of reality. And so you got to tread very carefully if you decide to go down the old reading conspiracy story stuff. But also, I have to catch myself on. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's kind of an interesting theory. And then before I know it, I'm down a rabbit hole. I'm like, nah, fuck that. Get out of that. Just close that shit and go can touch grass or something. Stand outside in your garden in bare feet. But the Charlie Kirk thing was so, I don't know what it was about that just like, it was an odd situation. I was in the house on my way to the studio weeks ago to do this, to record some podcast ideas, some topics I want to talk about. And I had like 2 of them written down. I was like, sweet, I'll pop into the studio, record 2 podcasts, do a bit of tidying up in the studio, it'll be grand. And then just as I was leaving the house, I opened Twitter. Why I opened Twitter, I have no idea. I refuse to call it X as well. So I opened Twitter, and it was just like this notification just popped up that Charlie Kirk had been shot. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And then I was like, I told my wife, I was like, did you hear, man, Charlie Kirk got shot? She's like, really? And I opened Twitter again to show her. And like, there was the video in my feed, no censorship, full quality, autoplay. Like the thing just autoplayed in my feed. I didn't even have an opportunity to work out what the fuck was going on. I was like, oh, check this out here. Oh, and as I looked, just there it was, and I'd seen it. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, maybe I didn't want to watch that. Maybe I wanted the opportunity to hit play or not hit play, but I didn't. It was just, now I've seen it. I can't unsee it. And I looked at my wife, we were like, fucking hell. And then it just looped, and I was like, oh my God, we've watched it 3 times. What the fuck is going on? So then I swiped off, and I was like, what is actually happening? So I left, and then got to the studio to record something, and started to record it, and it all seemed a bit fucking pointless, because my mind was preoccupied with this entire situation. And I think what was so weird about that, if you take your opinions on Charlie Kirk and put them aside, right, the concept of him aside, but just the act of this happening was wild enough, right? And then let's just put that aside as well, and just deal with the problem of that happened, and within minutes of that happening, I was watching it on my phone with no choice. That's insane. Like, that is actually insane. And then you think to everything that's been happening in Palestine, Ukraine, fucking go back through whatever many wars over the last 10 years where we've had that sort of impact, like that sort of, access, not impact, that sort of access. And you think like, that's fucking with everyone's heads. That is a lot of weight for us to take on board every single day, constantly. And when you're someone like me who makes things not only for a living, but for themselves, like I love creating and making stuff. When you are continually bombarded with the weight of the world and all these problems at this scale, as much as we are, it doesn't seem that important to make a vlog about photography for YouTube when you have 2,000 subscribers. Who gives a fuck? That's the train of thought that goes through my head when these things happen. And I've got friends who like constantly at marches and rallies for this thing and that thing, and then there's counter rallies and counter protests, and then there's fucking riots going on, and you're looking at all these things and you go, you know what, fuck it. Just gonna, why bother doing any of this stuff? Client work is fine. I guess you can put blinkers on and just carry on with what you're doing when it comes to client work, because there's a goal, there's an expectation. I'm there to do a job, and it's fine. But it's my own stuff that I struggle with. It's my own creativity. And then I do legitimately question the concept of what's the point in me doing this podcast? What is the point in me shooting a video for my YouTube? Why take a photograph, post on Instagram? It's not important. It doesn't matter. We're all fucked if I was going to look at the news. Why do we need this stuff? This is not the shit that we should be worrying about. But at the same time, you're sitting thinking, what's everybody's role? What's everybody doing in all of these situations? These problems are so huge. They're very hard to understand, to digest, to comprehend. And that's before, and that's like without actually doing something to help in some situation. And then you are onto the question of, well, what's actually helping? Is it helping shouting about stuff on social media? Is it helping going to protests? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Maybe we're, bringing up problems and highlighting to people. Maybe we're adding to the fucking noise. I don't know. I'm not sharing my opinion on that stuff. I'm just like, there's a lot going on. And I do sit there thinking about it. And then I've sat recently and I've been watching my daughter, and she makes her own little videos, and she makes a lot of art. She's been making pins and badges and stuff. And I sit and I watch her make stuff, and I watch her come to me and show me the stuff that she's made. And like, she's been making these masks for different things. But she's got this like mesh eye cover thing. Every time she makes a mask, she rips the cover off the previous mask, and then she uses it to like mesh out the back of the eyes in the new mask. And I'm like, why do you keep, I mean, to be fair, we can't find the fucking thing that she uses to, so I can give her more options. I don't know how hard we've looked, but we have looked. But she keeps reusing the same thing. And then I'm like, what about the other mask? And she's like, I chucked it out. Or I cut it up and done something else with it. And I'm like, wow, but why? Like, you spend all that time making it. And she was like, yeah, but that's the fun bit, the making it. Once I show you guys, like, I just want to make something else. And I was like, that's a very, very mature approach. That's a really inspiring, like, thought. Just that, the pure innocence in what she was doing there. She's sitting there, blinkers on. There's not really, like, that, the shit's going on in the rest of the world, but she's in her zone making her stuff. And I was like, that's the point. That is the point. Because I've had conversations with friends who are like just massively demotivated, who don't see the point in doing anything, and they stopped making things or posting. And when you talk to them, it's just a lot of, there's that's kind of the vibe. And I feel like that vibe is everywhere. Just this, what's the fucking, I was gonna, but then I didn't. And when I was watching my daughter doing this stuff, I'm like, this is mad, like this real, like, honest vibe to how she's doing stuff. And that is the point of it. It is like, the making is important to the maker because it's a communication tool. It's an expression tool. It's how we digest things and explore the world and thoughts and all those sorts of things. So I want to cover it in a couple of bullet points. But first, I have a quote, right? One of these stuck out in my head. I remembered this from years ago, and then it came up, right? It's Albert Einstein, of all people. And he says, creativity is seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what no one else has thought. And I was like, what is that? I remember being told that or reading that years ago. I was like, I need to get the words for it. And when I was searching for that, I found this other quote from Albert Einstein. Creativity is intelligence having fun. And I was like, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Like, because we immediately put creativity in its own little, like, I guess, little childish box of like fun. Oh, it's a hobby. It's just a bit of banter over there. It's so interconnected with everything we do in life, like in so many different ways. So I wanted to sort of look at a few of these things, these topics, right? Art keeps humanity human. And the idea is like, that's where we get our expression from. It's where we get our empathy from. It's how we explore conversation. It's how we give things in life meaning. And like, I've made some stuff over years, over a very long time. And some of it's shit. Some of it is great. And some of it need never see the light of day. But each one of those is like this small little step in not only self-development, but development of ideas down the line. In, stories or art or ad campaigns or video ideas or things that I say to other friends to inspire other people to make stuff. All of that stuff is that expression, that understanding of the world around us and our life. And without that, everything's just fucking rules, regulations, numbers, and news now. So the idea that having art and creativity, that's the human side to us. We have our pragmatic side that organizes stuff and structures things, and this is how we do this, and this is how we do this, and these are rules. But the art and creativity, that's the fun side. That's the bit where we break the rules, and explore new ways of doing stuff. And that is what leads on to the next great thing. Art is conversation, and artists are conversation makers. Everything we see, read, talk, watch, all of that stuff is art. Whether it's some fucking propaganda, or whether it's a fun story or a baking show on TV. All of this stuff is conversation pieces. It's how we connect with each other. It's how we connect with different people. And in that is how we provoke thoughts, how we open dialogue, and how we, I guess, break down walls or things that separate us. And it helps different groups of people connect with each other in a way that's a bit more free. Cultural identity depends on creativity and art. Artists, designers, illustrators, they document and they define the time, the era, the experiences that we live in. So like, there are some people that might document the things that are actually happening. And then there's people that document the things that no one's looking at. But all of those things are part of our story of as humans, as a species. And whether it's some weird side abstract art piece that's part of some fringe thing happening over there, or whether it's journalism or a story written about a person that's experienced this mad thing in life, the artistic side of that is what defines what's happened. It's how we document it. Like, if you think, there's two things that come to mind when I talk about that. One is the visual language that was created during lockdown. And like, so much of that stuff is just like ignored and no one gives a shit about it. You know, most people probably didn't even notice. But we all had to learn a new language, sort of. And it was a visual language. Do you know that the 2 foot marks in a circle, 2 meters apart? We all stood there and obeyed the rules. That was the pragmatic side of life. But a designer had to create those things. People had to make that. So there was a weird artistic side to that very pragmatic way of life. Someone has to create those rules, those guidelines. The 2 meter distance with the two, like, well, I would say the toilet icons, the people icons with the arrow. If we have that now, we don't need the 2 meters in it. We know that's 2 meters apart. We totally understand that. Everything to like the face coverings, to like there was so much of it. I went over to Dundee in Scotland to the V&A museum, and all about like the different art. It was an art show on at the time, and it was maybe, I don't know, the UK had opened up from the lockdown for like the second time. And I was over there doing stuff with the Scottish Tourist Board. I went into the V&A waterfront, that's the thing in Cape Town, the V&A museum. And they had a whole demonstration about this. I was fascinated by it. As soon as I saw it on, I was like, that's something I need to check out while I'm there. And there was this entire art piece, like, and I mean, I'm underselling it, their art piece. There was an expo all about the visual identity and the visual language that was created during lockdown. And it was, we were still living it right there and then. All the small signs, the things about washing your hands, the things, which is like ridiculous that we need a sign to wash our hands, but we do. Even now we still do, not even to do with that. I was in a bar the other day and I watched a bro just leave the toilet and out the door, and I'm like, bro, just wash your fucking hands. It's not that hard. But anyway, I digress. The visual language we learned there was created, and there is an artistic element to that, but then there's like a cultural understanding that is required from an artist or a designer or an illustrator who's making that stuff. You have to, it sounds simple, but sometimes the simple things are the hardest. A designer needs to understand how to implement those icons, what icons to use, what emotion or thought they'll provoke, how simply they'll be understood, how much information will be required around each of those little things, especially when you're designing like something like an icon. And then we all had to just learn that. And we learned that almost immediately and subconsciously because the people who were making those things were doing a fucking good job of it. Stay safe. And then like things like that, like little sentences that meant nothing before that. And now we know. That means stay inside your house and don't come out. Makes me think of Boris Johnson, a lot of that stuff. The yellow and black banding we used to get on the fucking pontoon that he would talk. Anyway, that's the second example is, and I listened to it like this week, is probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest pieces of art in my lifetime that I've experienced. And it was Bo Burnham's album Inside. And not just the album, but the full, what is it? Video, movie, live show. It's not a live show. If you don't know who Bo Burnham is, he's a comic, a stand-up comic from the UK. And he's gone through his ups and downs, and a lot of weird bits and pieces happen, and he's had loads of different types of shows. But during lockdown, he looked like from the outside that he mentally broke down. And while he did it, he created this fucking insanely good story called Inside, which effectively is a whole bunch of songs that he wrote during lockdown and performed during lockdown, recorded, made music videos all by himself inside this like one room that he had in his house. And I remember when it came out, I was watching it just like a man just saying stuff that we were all thinking, but like approaching all these really like everyday situations and these huge like economic situations and global issues, and just wrapping it up all into a bit of musical theater, but like so fucking good. And I listened to it the other day and I was like, this is just such an insanely good piece. And it was a perfect example of the importance for me in artistic expression in a situation like that. And that album for me is like a stamp in time. And I don't know, I'll play that to my kids when they're older. They might not mean anything to them. But for us as a generation, it showcases that piece of time so well. And that is why it is important. The other thing with art is art inspires social change. Anything from like criticizing rule or injustice to promoting change or a different way of thinking. Whether it's advertising campaigns or people making posters for protests and things like that. There is an artistic side to all of these elements. And somebody might make a short film or write a book or do an art piece that depicts a certain way of life that maybe they don't agree with, or a way that we need to try to make change, or at least initiate the process of starting to make change. It helps push and promote new ways of seeing stuff, new ways of looking at things in life. If you look at the value, like how important it is, how valuable it is to us, it's more than just like the price of, it's easy when we talk about a piece of art, people be like, oh, that piece of art is worth X amount. But I still think we're thinking of like the big, obvious art. I'm talking about the little things that all of us do on a day, like me doing this podcast or making a film. I hate to go back to lockdown again, but it's just such a good example. I made a lot of stuff during lockdown. Like I was actually pretty happy with the amount of short videos I made. And I tried some shit that I'd never tried before. I learned a whole bunch about masking and green screening, a whole bunch about stop motion animation that I hadn't done in years. But I also made a short film called Perpetual Limbo with my sister. And it was effectively the story of a student studying their final year university in lockdown, in complete solitude, in a time where they should have been with all their friends. We actually won an award for that film. The Greer Garson Film Award to Perpetual Limbo. Best piece of creative work in film. That's wildly overselling it. There's a video on YouTube. There's a video we made on YouTube. But it took time. We scripted and storyboarded the video. We had shot lists. Like, we spent time setting up, lighting all the frames. We took time to edit it, do the sound, the design around the posters around it. And like, you could have looked at that and gone, him and his sister just dicking around in the house making a fucking video. But there was a story behind that, something really important that we wanted to document and share about her in her final year. Because that was the point of it. My sister was doing her final year in university. It was a year where she was supposed to be out with friends, partying, learning together, like socializing. There was supposed to be this whole like community vibe thing going on. And no, nothing. She was locked in this house by herself. And that was the idea of that solitude. I think like for us, there was a real connection piece there. And that is the value of art in something like that. It's the emotional resonance we have with other people and the communal thinking, I guess, behind it. Because the amount of people that messaged me privately about that, to be like, that video hit home. Like, my daughter was in university, or I am in university and I'm struggling with this. And to see how you've depicted that and shown that and captured that, like, it meant something to people. I'm not saying hundreds of thousands of people, but enough people that if they were all in a room telling me that, my head would be about that size, right? So that was the value in that. In the economy side of it, artists, like, they innovate alongside technology. Again, our generation, Johnny Ive probably is the best example. The guy created the iPhone, designed the iPhone with Steve Jobs. What he made with the iPhone, and what he's made with so many of the Apple products from that, iMac as well, I think. He created the one thing that allows us all to be so interconnected in a way that feels, I guess, kind of natural. Allows us to make things with all this, but it's also the fucking device that ruins everything. Like, it's also one of the biggest fucking problems, in my opinion. As we like develop and as a technology develops and as things progress, it takes art, it takes creativity, and it takes design to work alongside that, to continue to drive that. Otherwise, you just stop where we are and we go, fuck it, we're just going to have phones for the rest of our lives and this will be the way it is. But now we're looking at like, Meta Ray-Ban, these fucking glasses, which are pretty freaking cool. But also, do we fucking need them? And when you look at like Apple Vision Pro, I mean, I don't really like Apple Vision Pro, but there's a part of me's like, we don't need this shit, they're clunky, they're shit, we get rid of them. But the concept of creating those is to create the next thing. It's part of the innovation process. Like, we need to get through stages to get to the piece that's right. We need to fuck up a lot of stuff to eventually get to the one that works, is effectively it. And you can see that in the battle between like the next AI piece between Meta and Apple are probably the two best examples. And if you think back to like Google Glass 10 years ago, it's laughable when you look at it now. But there's been a lot of innovation, and I got to hold the Meta glasses the other day. A friend Matt he's got a pair of them, and they're interesting. Like, I don't know how I feel about the camera being on the glasses all the time, but then maybe we also don't give a shit anymore. Like, maybe we're so used to people filming, it doesn't matter. But that's design and art and creative innovation that goes alongside that. Supporting art is supporting the future of everything we do. As a society, as a community, we need to invest in art, like financially, but also with our time. We should, as people who create things, continue to create, because as we make things together, we cultivate like a community resilience and empathy, like a shared vision, and we drive imagination, right? All those things that come from making and then making again and talking to other people who make. And that's the side of it I've always loved. And I get this little butterflies in my stomach when I think about things I want to make. Like, I legitimately go through these little phases where I'm like, I'm switched off from the rest of the world. I'm like, I got all these cool things I want to make. And sometimes those are like stories that feel quite important that I want to tell. And it does not take long for the world to just fucking stand on your head and go, nah, don't do that, buddy, because what's the point of all this shit's happening in the background? And also, it's not helped by people on the internet constantly shouting at everybody else for that stuff. Hey, you should all be doing this, because if you aren't, you're a horrible person. And it's like, well, yeah, fine, whatever. But we all have this small part to play in the world. And like, I feel like, as a creative person, I'm made to feel by people on the internet that the things that you want to make are no longer important because there's all these big things happening in the world. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to burden everybody with the weight of the whole world every single day. There's no way, we can't do that. Art doesn't feed the hungry. I mean, unless you're selling art and literally giving the money to them. It doesn't end wars or fix the state of our economy. Art is about meaning. It's about connection. It's about innovation. And it's about imagination. When the world feels like everything's falling apart, it's through expression that we are able to communicate, that we're able to share thoughts, share ideas, share visions, share solutions potentially. But if we don't make things, we'll never get there. And I'm not saying we're all gonna fucking, make some videos on TikTok and then next thing is we're saving the fucking planet. Maybe we just make a shitty podcast that 12 people listen to and everybody goes, why do you bother? And you go, just so I can make stickers for that reason. So I can have a shirt with my logo on it because it's fun, because it's an escape. When I think about my daughter sitting in a room and she's making these masks, or she's drawing and she's scribbling, and I listen to a bit of music or like humming a song while she does it. She's not doing it to just pass time. She's subconsciously affirming to herself that life is not just about survival. Art gives life shape, and it helps us see things in the world more clearly. And that's how we heal ourselves, all of us, individually and as a fucking community. Not through big grand gestures necessarily, but through small creative acts to remind ourselves that I'm still fucking here. I still have a heart. I still have a brain. I still have thoughts. I feel like I still have purpose on this earth. So art doesn't necessarily solve problems, but it is a constant reminder about the importance of solving problems and why solving problems matter. And it could be silly stuff. It could be like a stupid reel that you want to make. This is an idea that you've had for an animation or a stop motion or a stupid skit that you've wanted to make, or a podcast talking about fucking flowers in your garden. Whatever it is, it can be silly and it can be small because it's part of how we experience life. It's part of how we explore things, and it's part of how we collectively live, I guess, is what I'm getting at. From a personal level, it keeps me excited. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me engaged with life. It's always just been the way I've seen things. And I know that sounds so stupid and cliche, but I genuinely look at the world in a way that in shapes, in patterns, in ideas. I see something, I'm like, I'd love to do this there. I'd love to make something for this. I'd love to shoot a photo of this. We should do a video where we do this. Wouldn't it be cool to paint something here? I know a friend who does art that could do something on this. I also look at the world from a bike rider point of view, from BMX. I could, go up that bank, jump over that wall, and then break my arm on the other side of that because I'm not that good on a bike. But you get my drift. It's just how I see the world. If we stop doing all these things, we stop developing our thoughts, we stop developing our ideas, we stop communicating with each other, we stop exploring different avenues, and we genuinely stop our ability to advance, to make change, to make new stuff. So if you're like me and you're sitting there going, what's the fucking point? Just know that you're not the only one feeling like that. But as individual people, we're not built to take on all of the problems of the entire world every single fucking minute of every day. And it's all there in our phones constantly. It's just bombarding us. So don't feel like you need to take on every problem every day. Know that there's value in what we do as creative people and artists. And try to not get too bogged down with the gaslighting and virtue signaling that we see on social media platforms. Because that's its own problem. That's its own issue where everyone just needs a little bit more education, social etiquette on the internet, that kind of thing. Thanks for listening to this. Just a lot of thoughts that I wanted to get out there, and I've spoken to a few people about it, and other people feel the same. So maybe you've listened to this and it's helped. Would love to know what you think, what your thoughts are. What do you want to make? What's stopping you from making? You know what I'm saying? Thanks for listening to this. Have a great week.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
I think that's a pretty good podcast. I thought about this one, but in depth. It wasn't just a rant. I had a direction. I had structure. And I hope you appreciate that. What's the point? What is the point?